Okay, I'm doing okay so far.
Yeah, we're off to a start.
That's good.
Good.
I started out in actually just being interested in art in general. And when I was a kid, the only art that I really recognized as art was the possibility of being a cartoonist for Walt Disney. And then when I went to college, I was required to take a ceramics class. By that time, in high school, I was interested in painting and saw that as my future. But in college, I was required to take a ceramics class and pretty much was taken with it. And so I continued in ceramics in college and in painting also. And then after college, I moved to Boston temporarily, or tried to find something going with a potter in the New England area. That didn't pan out, and so I came to Santa Fe in '72, in late '72, and still was unclear whether I'd pursue ceramics entirely or painting or what was going to happen. I made furniture for 3 years in Santa Fe. And then at the age of 25, decided that I needed to get started with either painting or ceramics, and I chose ceramics because it was a more practical path. So I started in '75 working full-time. I quit my job of making furniture, working in a small craftsman kind of furniture shop, and started making pottery full-time. I worked in Santa Fe for 3 years. I lived a couple of blocks off the plaza in Santa Fe, lived and worked in an old house that was going to be torn down if nobody would buy it. And nobody bought it, but it got to be torn down. I didn't have the money to buy it. So I found this house in the village of Pilar, which is where my studio still is today. And that was in '78, and I bought a house that I turned into studio space and living space. The painting, my ideas probably go back and forth between the paintings and the ceramics. Some of the paintings that I do are related to the ceramics. Some of the ceramics I do are related to paintings. Ideas come different places. Sometimes the magpie pattern, which I've been doing, my family and I were in Rome a couple years ago, and I saw an old Roman piece that was a piece of a Roman temple, I guess, that was plastered into a church in the alcove going into the church. And from that, I turned it into a magpie picking at an apple. So the ideas come from different places. It helps if I'm not at work, it seems, to get ideas, even like at an airport. Like on a recent trip, when I got to the airport, I did drawings for about 2 or 3 hours waiting for a plane. And that was, some new things came out, just if I have the time to think. The last few years, I started painting more seriously about '99. And at that time, my wife and I were traveling to Mexico. We got to spend a month or two each year in Mexico, and I could take paper paint with me to Mexico, work on paintings there, and then bring them back, and the better ones were framed and sold. Some of them still are unframed and in a flat file somewhere for possible framing at a later date. So right now I'm not spending as much time painting, I'm spending more time on the ceramics. As far as the painting or the ceramics, I love the one I'm with. I'm not a big Stephen Stills fan, but I do feel that way about it. It's like usually when I'm painting, I'm very excited, at least when I start. And then usually there's a time where in the painting, because usually I do the paintings one day and that's it. And sometimes get started on a painting and you're going along and then you think, I have to bring this to some conclusion. And that's where it's not maybe so fun. You can have a great idea, get started on it, and then, wait a minute, this is a little more difficult than I thought. The ceramics are probably more restful, especially the making. It's more physical, and I can listen to music and, you know, just kind of zone out. And then the decorating of the ceramics, the same way, although it involves a little bit more mental. The painting, I listen to music at times, but it's definitely more mental. Okay, when I used to do, starting in the late 80s, as I believe part of the Ralph Lauren focus on Santa Fe and Santa Fe style really taking off, the ceramics, my ceramics business took off. And we were mainly selling wholesale at that time. We developed, by the end of the 90s, we were selling to over 100 accounts in the US and a little bit in Europe. We had some inquiries from Japan. We employed about 10 people. At that time, we were producing about 30,000 pieces a year. It doesn't seem possible from this perspective of just me working with one assistant. Currently, I'm making about 2,500 to 3,000 pieces a year. And I'm doing all of the decorating. I'm doing all of the round pieces on the potter's wheel. I have help doing some of the more manual things. But when we were doing the wholesale business, I had a lot of people that were quite skilled and they could do everything, and I got to come up with new ideas and they could implement them. And people could do everything. I could leave. That was kind of my dream, I guess, that I would spend my time painting in Mexico. Everything would go fine here. It didn't quite work. It came close to working perfectly. And then in about 98, 99, we got out of the wholesale business and we just started selling. We opened a gallery in Taos, to backtrack a minute. We opened our gallery in Taos in 1994. So we were supplying 100 places around the country, plus we were selling in Taos. And we, first of all, got rid of about 100 of our outlets, and then we had 10 good ones, and then in another year we got rid of the last 10 accounts, and we just sell everything in Taos and at the studio. At this time, we're mainly selling to repeat customers. We're seeing a lot of our old Texas ladies are gone, and they used to pull up even before the gallery was open in Taos, down here at the studio in Pilar, and they'd be in their Suburbans and they would come in and just stack up the work, and it was a time. And Santa Fe was big, and I was riding on that. And now we're selling a lot, like I said, to repeat customers. I think the art business now is down, and I think Santa Fe and Taos are down, and it's just a changing time. And I've been very fortunate that I went through a real up period for arts and crafts, decorative arts, and got to be part of it. And now things are maybe a little different. We're selling somewhat online, not big, but we still sell 25% is over the phone of people calling us up who are familiar with the work. Over the last 30 years, I've worked with basically the same shapes. I make about 30 shapes. and then the patterns vary. And some of the patterns we've done, like the Day of the Dead pattern, we have done over the last 30 years, maybe 30 plus years, and it still is a very popular pattern. As far as introducing new patterns like the magpie pattern, that started a year ago, and I did some drawings, a series of drawings, kind of worked it out in my head how it was going to go, and then started producing it. So it can go into production fairly rapidly, but then once it's in production, you work out the small details, like it's not going to work in blue or it's going to work in turquoise. The fruits need to be orange rather than red, or vice versa. And currently I'm working on some grapes. This is pretty, micromanaging, but it's like, well, do the grapes work on a white background? Do they work on a blue background? Do they not work at all? As far as contacting us, we have we have a presence on the web, a presence on Facebook. Most every day I post something, either a painting or a piece of pottery on Facebook. And also we have the studio is open most days in Pilar. As I get older, I'm not coming in as early as I used to. So we are opening at the studio at 11 o'clock. I'm kind of guaranteeing 11 to 4 right now, and that seems to tire me out enough. But the internet, we're seeing, and it's possible to go to the website now and push the button and buy the piece and give your credit card information, and it's all quite slick. The website is www.stephenkilborn.com, STEPHENKILBORN. Also Kilborn Pottery, KILBORN, The studio number is 575-758-0135. Well, I think it's, I feel that I've been very fortunate to be involved in the decorative arts business, my working career. I'm the first person in my family to have an opportunity to go to college, and maybe it wasn't the best choice to study art, but it worked. And I've been self-employed for 41 years, and what a dream it's been.